Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 248, Videodrome, directed by David Cronenberg, 1983. Now, before he was known as the guy who could put Stephen King, The Dead Zone, William S. Burroughs, Naked Lunch, and J.G. Ballard, Crash, 1996. Before he was known for doing that, he did some original material. He did Rabid, he did Scanners, and this. And now, interestingly enough, this would be the last of his original ones for quite a while. Until 1999 when he made Existence. But boy oh boy, Cronenberg. Cronenberg, and even when he did more adaptations, he still has that Cronenberg tendency, which I don't expect anything less out of Cronenberg. Basically, he makes a very, very visceral cinema where just things start to mutate, and there's also this unsettling undercurrent that goes on that gives it a very surreal or dreamlike quality that again characterizes Cronenberg. So the story, in so many words, Max Wren, played by James Woods, he runs a cable TV channel that specializes in everything from softcore pornography to hardcore violence. And one day he discovers this pirate broadcast that showcases these scenes that are just basically torture, but it's meant to arouse, and he is really, really fascinated by this, and he wants to see if he can try to get this broadcast into it, and it's called Videodrome. But as a result of watching this and getting deeper into it, a lot of things happen to him and to some of the people around him, and nothing is the same. And there's some very, very strange moments in it, to put it mildly. You have televisions that just sort of pulse and move and inflate. You have a hand that changes into a gun, and actually instead of shooting bullets, it actually shoots cancer tumors. You have various people exploding, and there's things are communicated by beta tapes that gets shoved into your stomach that looks sexual. You know what Freud would say about that prosthetic? And he may have been right. But anyways, so yeah, lots of weird stuff. And if you're not at all familiar with Cronenberg, just be prepared. But obviously there are lots of fans of Cronenberg that live for this. Now, what I really like about this film, especially with all the weirdness and everything, what I really like about this film is that in spite of the fact that it was released 30 years ago, it's still quite visceral, and it's still quite relevant. And for the first one, for the visceral, and a lot of it has to do with how everything was achieved. We're so used to having most effects be visual effects, and all done with a computer. I mean, even things like blood spurts are more often not done digitally. And I'm not saying it's completely bad or that it should be done away with. I think with any computers, just like with anything you use in cinema, they're just tools, and it's all in the matter of how you use them and who's holding it. It's like with any tool. You can use hammer, nail, saw, and other tools to make a great house, or you can make a house a la Homer Simpson, just bunch of crap. And so I definitely I like it when tools are used well. And so I'm not completely against computers used in for visual effects. I'm not against digital visual effects. I'm not totally against 3D. What I am against is just it used for very superficial or stupid reasons. Like I know that Avatar was made for 3D. It was designed for 3D, and thus the 3D element is well justified. Hugo was conceived in 3D, and it was well justified. But just throwing it in for whatever reason is kind of stupid. But anyway, I'm done with that. So anyway, so at a time when most everything is done after the fact, it is quite refreshing to see some actual on-set special effects. And a lot of this was done largely with these were mostly makeup effects. Rick Baker was one of the makeup effects supervisors, and he and his team and a few other effects supervisors, they all had to come up with ways to realize these strange things that Cronenberg wrote down in his script. And of course what makes this really interesting is that the actual production of the film was very, very short. They were able to, because this was made in Canada, the financing and film productions there, it made it so that you had to spend the money within the calendar year. So if you submitted a project and it was approved, that means you had to get it done within that calendar year. And they were able to get production going through but due to various delays and everything, they were only able to start production in October of 1981. And it was also with a fairly incomplete script. Everything was more or less there, but it was also still kind of a work in progress. But I think what made it all work was that a lot of it was already there anyway. It was just a matter of finishing it, and you also had really good people behind it, and they wanted to make this work. They wanted to make this really, really something, and that's how it all pulls together. So, and I will say this, and to do a little sidetrack about the film itself, there are some things that it does feel a little bit, for lack of a better word, half-baked. Not in terms of how stupid the ideas were. Some of it feels a little bit unfinished or underdeveloped. And I think it's a lot to do with the production itself. The fact that they started so late and they only had so much time to actually do the principal photography for it. So in some ways, there are some moments where it feels like there's some more things that could have been explored or could have been better explained or better flushed out. But nonetheless, it still works. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I think it's what brings it down. If you were to rate this on IMDb, it's the kind of thing that will notch it down a couple of stars. I think I rated this an 8 in IMDb. But anyways, so back to the whole visceral thing. So all the effects were done. It was on set. Everything was constructed. It was using makeup effects, and yes, there were some video effects, what you could do in 1981, but it was all done to service a whole, and it was very much part of the story. The story is about a television broadcast, and this was in the advent of video. In fact, this is where beta is still around was still around as a format, And in fact, I mentioned that there's messages and instructions and things that are communicated through videotapes, and they actually use beta cassettes, and then just shoves it into your thing. but but yeah, it's very strange. And concerning for Rick Baker, this came right after his work for An American Werewolf in London, and if you know about that film, you know what the big highlight of that film was. So then he has to go from that to, okay, how do I make this TV that's alive? And but he loved it. It was great, and it was inspiring creatively, and it was great that Cronenberg was able to get such a creative team that were able to make this all possible, and it makes the whole thing very, very visceral. I mean, even today, that's what's so great. It's you can still feel it. It gets under your skin. And this also leads into the other thing, that it's the film, having been released 30 years prior, it's also very, very relevant. And it's because, to use a line from the film, it has a philosophy. A lot of the ideas it's basically a visualization of the writings of Marshall McLuhan, who was the famous media theorist. He was the one who famously said the medium is the message. And it's really just it's sort of his ideas done as a sort of a horror, as a horror film. And it's still very relevant. And particularly the idea of technology transforming people. And there have been other people, like neurologists, for instance, that have commented on how digital technology may have in fact altered our neuroprocessing, the way that we process information. And that's I believe that. And that's what makes it interesting. And also, and going back to the whole underdeveloped thing, that's kind of also what makes it a little bit frustrating a bit, because you want to go, that there should be more to it. But at the same time, you like that it gives you just enough information to kind of let you, for lack of a better word, for you to get into it and kind of imagine it for yourself. And actually going back slightly to existence. So I think it has been said that existence is a kind of continuation of some of the ideas that were explored in Videodrome, just the intersection of technology and humanity, and how technology influences human beings and has a visceral effect on it. And you see that in the transformation of Max Wren. Everything is all dictated by television, by video, by media, and contemporary modern media, and he's now quite literally a different being. He's a technological animal, and this was also something that, when I talk about a certain film way down the pipeline, it's kind of interesting that sentiment can also be found there, but it's also found in Videodrome. But again, it's executed in a more visceral horror way. Now, because of all of this, that you can watch this, and even though it's 30 years old, it's still very visceral, still very relevant. It then makes you wonder, why in the hell is this film gonna get remade? And I don't know if it's actually going to happen. I think it's still a possibility. and I dread it. I really, really dread it. And other people who have seen the film, and certainly other people who love the film, feel this dread as well. Now, the director attached to it, to this remake, and I think it's slated to come out either this year or next year. But the director attached to it is Adam Berg, and he did a couple of shorts. The most famous short was actually a commercial he did for Philips. It was called Carousel. Look it up here. I'll also include a link in the description as well, just to see it. And it is a great little 2-minute piece. It's a great example of something that uses a lot of, there's a lot of technology involved, but it's all there to serve telling the story and giving this. I'll let you see it for yourself, but it's really, really great. So with Adam Berg, it gives me some hope that this could work. But what really makes me dread this is Aaron Kruger is attached to write it. This is the same guy that gave us Transformers, and including Transformers: Dark Side of the Moon phase, whatever the hell that's called. Him is responsible for doing the remake of Videodrome, and you're thinking, why? Why does this need to be remade? Because, again, like I said, it's why would you need to do it? It's not like you need to update this. I mean, I guess maybe you could update some of the technological concepts instead of this was shot in '81, so this was right around the time when cable was becoming a thing. You had the emergence, and you actually had the emergence of cable, of certain key paid cable channels like HBO and Showtime. They started around this time, so it was right around the advent of that. It was right around the advent of home video. Like I said, they used beta tapes, so even beta was still around, and then eventually VHS was there. So yeah, you could probably update some of the concepts with it, but again, I don't think that is not a sufficient reason for doing it, because that to me is what makes it interesting. You can even though the technology is not, we have many more channels now than what was initially offered through cable 30 years ago. We no longer have VHS. Interestingly enough, the last VHS title to be made, or the last major studio title to be made available in VHS, was A History of Violence, directed by David Cronenberg. So, chew on that. Anyways, so yeah, we no longer have VHS. We now have DVD, we have Blu-ray. We're now watching our films through our phones and through TVs connected to the internet, and so, but it's, even though the capabilities are greater, there's more capabilities, there's greater capabilities, you can do more, and you can do more with less, and all those things. You can translate what you can watch Videodrome, translate all that stuff in your head, and you can imagine it. And that, I think, makes it much more satisfying. There's a big difference between active viewing and passive viewing, and I think by watching Videodrome as it was made, it allows for more active viewing, and I'm sure it allowed for active viewing for its time anyway. But the fact that you can still have either it's still active viewing or it became more active viewing later on, I think is a great testament to the film. But I have this feeling that in the remake, everything's going to be spelled out. So, which I know kind of contradicts what I said before about how I felt some of the things were a little bit underdeveloped, and like there could have been more to it. But at the same time, the fact that you have to kind of fill it in for yourself, and you have to imagine or imply what else could be there, makes it much more satisfying, because you are involved. You are, in a way, a participant of that universe, and you feel like a kind of distant co-creator of the project, rather than just, because if everything is spelled out for you, then you're not going to really care. But it's like, okay, well, that's what it was. All right, fine. And you're either not going to care, or you're going to get frustrated because it's probably going to be a stupid explanation, or you think, how does that work? And that's what I dread in the remake. I was completely against it when I heard that Aaron Kruger was involved in it. It's like, okay, there's no way that this could possibly work. I dread it. When I heard that Adam Berg was attached to it, and then when I saw Carousel, I thought, okay, this gives me a little bit of hope, because this looks like a guy who is very talented visually, and I think he could probably do something with it. But a director can't really save a bad script. If the script is bad, then it's pretty much doomed. It's the kind of thing where I almost kind of hope that, yeah, Kruger can write whatever he wants, but hopefully Berg has enough daring to just chug the whole thing and just kind of start over. And maybe that could work, but I'm dreading it. And I know a lot of other people are dreading this. So really, just go and see the original. In fact, it's also available on Blu-ray. And in fact, this is the other thing I really like about it. Again, Criterion in their packaging. This is actually designed as if it were home video. Because there you go. And yes, this is actually a beta tape. So, title's there. And it also carries over. See? Oh yeah, here we go. So there you go. See, it all fits with the film. And I believe the packaging is the same for Blu-ray, and I think it makes it even more look like home video, because, well, actually, I don't know. I think the DVD dimensions make it closer to a beta tape. But anyway, but the point is, go see Videodrome. Forget about the remake. This is what Jay Sermon said in The Critic. If they remake a classic, go check out the classic. And you never thought, and that, you never thought that you would call this a classic, but I think it's certainly deserving of. It's certainly a very worthy candidate of the classic label. I know some people would dispute that, like, what? You have, like, televisions that throb and everything, and it's all this sexual connotations and everything. You really want to call that a classic, really? But it works. Again, it's visceral, it's relevant, it's interesting, and it's an intelligent man's horror. It's not just horror for the sake of horror. It's not just grossing people out just for the sake of grossing people out. It actually has a point to it, and I like films that have points to them. It makes it so much more interesting for the viewer in a lot of ways. So there you go. I don't think there's any. Who knew that Videodrome could make somebody laugh? I guess maybe I'm affected by the transmissions now, so I guess I better check to see if. Okay, that's still good. Okay, I don't have to. All right, I guess I'm fine for now. but yeah, in all seriousness, give Videodrome a spit. Even if you're not one for ick, I would say give it a shot. It's not that intense, and I think that's the other good thing. It's done fairly tastefully. You don't feel like anything is gratuitous or it's just done for the sake of shock. Again, it has a point. It has a purpose. It has a philosophy, and that is what makes it interesting. Videodrome. So So until then, death to Videodrome, long live the new flesh.